of the U.S. He's running against a two-term career politician who has worked his way up through state offices and is now just loitering at the federal level. So Kevin is a libertarian, and he is running a race on many issues that are very based in libertarian principles. So Kevin, I'm just going to kind of kick it off to you. Why don't you tell people who you are and why you're running?
Yeah, right on. So yeah, I'm Kevin Wilson. I've been around libertarian politics for a while now. I've been with the party since 2013. I've supported people like Larry Sharp. I was his fundraising director back in 2018, helped us get ballot access here. Been supporting candidates for a while. And, I decided we needed someone in this area who was able to speak to libertarian issues. And I wanted someone to talk about the stuff that's important to not just libertarians, but to all voters in this area. It's talking about the debt, talking about COVID-19 response now, talking about education, talking about ending the wars, and talking about, bringing jobs back to the area too. And not just bringing jobs back to the area. It's really about letting people have their own opportunities to be inventive and create and connect people with products and services that they want. And so that's why I'm running, is to open up the opportunities for people in this area to be able to do what they want to do and do what they love, as long as they're not hurting people or taking their stuff.
Okay. So you brought out a lot there in there. So let's start going through some of that. One of the things, obviously in New York, I think COVID-19 is a top discussion for a lot of people. So I know on your website, you've proposed some things that you would have at least advocated to do differently. So what are some of the things that you would have done differently or advocated the federal government done differently for your state?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of things. We had Governor Cuomo do a bunch of stuff, but on the federal level, and also I want to back up a second, give a context where we are. So this is Rochester, New York. That's where this district is. For those of you who don't know what the district numbers mean, I'm from Rochester, New York. We didn't get hit quite so bad as New York City, but there's still a few cases here. But on the nationwide scale, what we saw the failure of the CDC and the FDA to be able to respond to these things appropriately. Particularly, we saw the CDC kind of stifle the development of the test. The FDA stifled the development of the test, and we had the CDC and the FDA try to lock down the number of tests that are available, despite the fact that there are viable tests worldwide developed and used by the World Health Organization. We didn't have those in the United States. That is a calamity. And that delay in testing and access to those resources ended up costing many thousands of lives. So when I look at what happened with the federal government, I think we need a big response to pandemics like this. But that big response can't be just in the hands of the federal government. It needs to be in the hands of companies. It needs to be in the hands of pharmaceuticals. It needs to be in the hands of individuals who are taking personal responsibility to protect themselves. And again, instead, what we get in a lot of these situations is more calls for centralization. And I think that's a mistake. I think that centralization isn't strength, it's weakness. Particularly we saw with the politician who's in the seat, Joe Morelli, Congressman Morelli. He's calling right now for, again, greater centralization of this. And he's calling for the use of the Defense Production Act to control more aspects of things like PPE and testing production.
So rather than letting the market decide, he wants to be the one that's smart enough to know what the supply and demand should be for all medical supplies.
And what's bizarre? It's not even him. He's trusting President Trump and his administration to do that, which, okay, fine. If you're a Republican, I might get it a bit more, but he voted to impeach the guy. Yeah. So why, why would you want to give more power to the Trump administration that you don't trust? You talk about how you don't trust, yet you want to have him use the Defense Production Act to centralize production of essential protective equipment that at the time he said it, maybe I could have given him a pass, but he's still saying it. And now we've seen how companies have risen up, been creative, use their ingenuity to be able to meet the demands of the market. And the biggest thing to that was usually the government getting out of the way. Yes, you can sell these masks. Yes, you can develop this way of being able to sanitize masks and be able to get those masks back into the hands of the healthcare workers. Yes, here's an easier way to produce hand sanitizer, and we're going to stay out of your way. When the government did that,
Mm-hmm.
we had a much better response.
Yes. Initially, you bring up the hand sanitizer. I know distilleries were jumping on it right away to try and get it out there, but they were shutting them down because they didn't add the bitterant to make it taste bad if someone drank it. They, I know, the CDC, you mentioned the testing. There was restrictions on which ones they had to go through such rigorous efficacy testing, even though they were already being used and sold from here out to the rest of the world and vice versa. Handing it over to the government doesn't seem to be working in most cases. And they typically just kind of spend a lot of our money. And I know the national debt is also a big topic of yours. So what are some of the things that you think we should do to rein in the national debt?
Oh, goodness. I mean, right now it's so out of control. It doesn't even feel like money's real anymore. I know we just had, I think the HEROES Act's probably going to get through in, you got to love those acronyms too, right? Just like the CARES Act.
Yes. It makes you feel like you're a horrible person if you don't support it.
How could you oppose the CARES Act?
Exactly.
Don't you care? How could you oppose the HEROES Act? Don't you support heroes?
Exactly. It's a whole diminishing anyone who doesn't support the rise of printing more money.
But anyway, several $1 trillion later, that's where we're at. And, again, I think these types of situations, I can get the argument for spending more money, right? But we've come to a point where it becomes more and more difficult to spend that money responsibly, right? If we had a balanced budget before, we had a relatively low, debt to GDP ratio, and then we have an emergency situation, we need to spend a bit more to get out of it. Okay, all right, like I'm a little bit more amenable to that. But right now, we're spending so recklessly, so irresponsibly, it's hard to imagine how we'll ever get out of it. But we do need to start somewhere, right? Now, a good place we could have started is the recent National Defense Appropriation Act that just came through.
Yes.
So there was an amendment to that where we could have cut 10% of spending. Now, to some folks, 10% of spending, that sounds like a lot of spending. How could you cut 10% of the military? Well, here's the thing. That only brings it back to about 2016, 2017 levels. So when I say 10% cut in spending, it's not – it's still a lot of money, but like we're not bringing it down.
You mean back to the levels when we were going to be getting out of the wars? What Trump said he was going to do, which he hasn't done. And
he sure hasn't.
And he hasn't. And that's talking about reining in executive power is one of your things, and having the legislative branches do legislative actions instead of abdicating their power over there. So what sort of things would you do to try and end the wars and rein in that executive power of the executive branch?
I mean, for sure, I would have voted for there's the Ilhan Omar amendment to the National Defense Appropriation Act that would have accelerated the removal of American troops from Afghanistan, which unfortunately my congressman voted against. And I'm not sure why. He sometimes presents himself as an anti-war candidate. And part of the argument that people were making against it was like that the president had too much power in this case. But my goodness, we need to find a time to actually end the wars. We all agree we need to be out of this thing. We just need to do it.
Yeah, I like Joe's campaign, wars end when you say they do. Like it's up to the people to say this. We're done bombing people if we're going to be done bombing people, because I know I don't support it, and I know Congress hasn't declared it, but we're still out there doing it. So, moving on there. So we've talked about spending, and one of the big things with spending right now is everyone's talking about is getting our kids back to school. And then what should the funding be for that as we're sending our kids back to school as well, if they're not in school, and possibly supporting pods and other sort of alternative education options. So what is your opinion on those sort of topics?
Yeah. So let me start with like where I started coming up with an education plan a few months ago. Like before I started running, I started thinking about these types of things. And I started thinking about the fact that so in the Rochester City School District, there are two significant problems that I'm sure will shock some of your listeners. But first of all, last year they had a graduation rate of less than 60%. Mm-hmm. That sounds terrible, but they were celebrating this because it's the best they had done in a while. So they were celebrating a 60% graduation rate in the city where I live. So I live in the city of Rochester. Mm-hmm. The other thing is that they were tens of millions of dollars over budget in how they spent. And what the city school district did is they ended up spending all this money because they're like, well, someone's going to bail us out, so we just need to do this thing, and then someone will fix it. We can't let education fail. They're not going to let this happen. So we have a city school district here. The education crisis is very, very real. They are not providing the state and the city are not providing the level of education that we would expect out of our government to provide. Right now, of course, I'm sure many of your audience would say, "Well, why does the government need to be providing it?" And I kind of agree with you, but this is how most people think. Now, what I thought might be better is just thinking of new ways that we can leverage digital technology to be able to connect students with course instructors, either outside of their district or maybe even across the country, and connect with course materials that teach those core concepts, but don't necessarily fall strictly within the curriculum that, is being dictated by Common Core, right? So we have this opportunity to say, and again, this is stuff I was talking about before the COVID thing happened, and it kind of changed the conversation a little bit. But we have this opportunity to say, okay, is there a way that we can teach, geometry through Minecraft? Is there a way that we can teach history through cooking? Is there different ways that teachers can help students connect with materials in a way that is meaningful to them, that connects with their cultures, their backgrounds, and their interests, but still teach these core concepts in a way that doesn't, in a way that maybe falls a bit outside of the mold that's what is allowed with the national Common Core standards, right?
Yes.
So my idea was students, especially at the high school level, should be able to pick and choose and build an education platform that works for them, that's more effective, that doesn't put you into a one-size-fits-all pattern that drives a lot of students, including many of my friends who are brilliant but never did well in school, drives a lot of them to think that they are not smart, that they're stupid because they don't do well in that testing environment. So giving students more option to be able to explore, to try different pedagogies, to try different ways of, learning and connecting the materials of this world with bigger concepts. I think of things like I spoke with some people in trades programs, and the only way that they were able to learn like chemistry and math was through welding. It was abstract to them before, but when put in the context of like welding, when they're like, okay, like this is how I make this thing work, and this is the science behind that, then it clicked. Yep. It's a great thing. So my education plan is to kind of allow a slow decentralization of that process, to say that maybe kids don't need to go through the school district, that kids in Rochester and the surrounding areas and kids all over the country and their families should be able to find new ways to help them connect with materials that are meaningful to them. And so, the funding mechanisms for being able to do that could be, probably state-based, but I think the first step in that is to whittle down the Department of Education and maybe eliminate it entirely, and to end the Common Core standards. And again, if you're one of those teachers or parents who thinks Common Core is great, I want to keep that, that's fine. There's still going to be
your choice to be able to do that.
Do your thing. That's fine. Yeah, no one's going to stop you from doing that. And there's some good stuff in there. I really like some of the methodology behind learning history in Common Core. I think it's really interesting. Great. If you want to take a piece of that and run with it, go for it.
Yeah. You don't have to throw it all out. If there's things you like, you can obviously do some more. So moving on there, we'll look at a few of your other things, looking at your topics. One topic that everyone always brings up is climate change. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you're probably not in support of fossil fuel subsidies. I'm just guessing out there. So
you're a smart man. Good guess. Nope, not a big fan of fossil fuel subsidies. And that's one of the easy things that should be a bipartisan fix, or tripartisan fix too. If you're a Democrat, you say, why would we want to fund, the fossil fuel industry, contribute to global warming? If you're a Republican, in theory, you should say that you're against subsidies for any industry. Now, of course, that hasn't historically been true. They like to say that sometimes, but how they vote is a totally different matter. So yeah, step one, let's get rid of the subsidies for the fossil fuel industry. That'll make a huge difference overnight. And then step two, there's some options to be able to make it easier for alternative energy to be able to happen too. I think one of the areas where it can make some of the biggest gains is probably nuclear power.
I agree. Yes.
Yeah. There's some great new technologies coming out around nuclear power that right now it's so hard to even get like the proper testing done. It can be years before they're able to even start the process of getting approved to actually provide commercially viable nuclear power. And I don't know how you can look at that situation and not think, all right, we must be doing something wrong here. There's a overabundance of caution that I think costs too much at times.
Yes, and people get worried about it, but we've been running nuclear power in our nuclear subs in the Navy for decades without incident, and those are like 18 to 22-year-old kids, most of them that are that are the nukes on those subs. And
my dad was one, actually. He worked on Trident submarines.
Yeah, so I mean, he can attest to the safety and the controls that they put in place, and I don't think anyone working in a nuclear plant is going to personally feel that skipping a control is a good idea. They shouldn't, I would hope, in any situation, and there should be enough in the way where we're not having incidents. And I think the technology has moved along quite a bit.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, and they have great ways of dealing with waste nowadays. People think that there's a ton of waste related to nuclear power. Really, especially with the newer reactors, like it's not theirs. There's not really anything. It's safe.
I think 97% of our current nuclear waste could be recycled and reused currently that we store in the U.S. just because we don't have new reactors that can burn it down far enough. Yeah. So I'm an electrical engineer in my background, so it's all my whole little world there. But anyway, so we're going to keep moving. So tell me a little bit about your campaign here. What are some of the things that you need for your campaign? Do you need donations? Do you need volunteers? Do you need social media help with people out here who are willing to help support candidates? What are the things that you need to make your campaign successful this year?
So yes to that, all the above. So of course, here in the Rochester area and beyond, there's a lot of stuff that we can do online nowadays, helping out with social media, sharing posts, things like that. You know, I'm doing local interviews all the time too. So sharing that stuff, especially if you're in the area, tell your friends and family about it. Volunteers too. We're gonna try to slowly see how door knocking works. You know, we've had some mixed results with that.
I can't imagine people are too happy if you're knocking on their door right now. Like, just in general, you never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah, so some people are fine and they're like, they want to give you a hug type of thing, and I'm like, maybe not that, but and other people are mad that you're even there.
Yes.
So, and you never know what you're going to get. So we're trying to figure out a good way to do that, a good way to call people too. We got a phone system that's being set up. But of course, donations are important too. Now I'm running a bit of a money bomb right now. So my 30th birthday is on Sunday. So I'm trying to get at least 100 people to donate $30 for my 30th birthday. And
yeah. So 100 people for Kevin Wilson. So KevinWilsonForCongress.com. The link's in the description. Go donate $30 for his campaign for his birthday. $3,000, that can buy a lot of signs, that can pay for a lot of phone calls, that can do a lot of good work for a campaign if they're smart with their money.
Yeah. So that's the ticket, right? It's not, my goal is to have me be able to deliver that libertarian message out to voters in this district. And it's important for a couple of reasons. One is it's important just to spread the message, to build new libertarian voters, to tell people that they have a third option in any of these elections, and to also put pressure on the incumbents of like, hey, there's an appetite for libertarian policy out there. So like the only goal, like I want to win this race, but that isn't the only goal. The other goal is like we become such a big force in local politics that they have to start co-opting our issues in order to remain a viable candidate. Yes. And that is a strategy. Now my strategy is to win, but if they take a few of my issues and run with them, then I ain't going to be mad about that. I'm going to be all right with that if those policies end up making it in the law. And of course, there's another important reason too. In this area, we have a lot of great congressional candidates who are thinking the same way. They're trying to do that. Dwayne Whitmer out in the 27th, Andrew Colsey down here, Keith Price. There's a bunch of folks here in central and western New York who are trying to build the libertarian message. But of course, we want to go and support our top of ticket candidates as well and kind of get that synergy between both. In New York State, that's especially important because our ballot access this year depends on presidential votes, which is a new thing for New York State. Okay. So what
do you guys need to get now? Because it's always been signatures before in New York. So probably 5%, I'm sure.
So here's a little background. Larry Sharp got his ballot access in 2018 because he got 50,000 votes, and that used to be what the threshold was for being able to be a real party in New York State. And then we have to collect a proportion of signatures of enrolled libertarians instead of tens of thousands of signatures for many races. Okay. So in this year, Governor Cuomo decided that he was going to build a unelected commission on campaign finance, and then changed the laws to make it so that the race was that determines ballot access, both the governor's race and the presidential race. And instead of it being 50,000 votes, it's going to be it's going to end up being like 130,000 votes. So it's almost triple what we had to get for Larry Sharp's race. We got close to 100,000 votes in Larry Sharp's race in 2018, but it's going to go up a lot this year. So in New York State, people like me are working hard not only to bring that message and kind of have like a local voice and a local face attached to like, here are some libertarian policies that are going to benefit you and your family. The other thing is we need to hope those people also say, well, if Kevin's good, then maybe we should vote for Jo Jorgensen too, even if we haven't heard of her.
Yeah.
And I know the folks out in Western New York, Dwayne and all them, they want to do the same thing too. They're knowing that part of that message is we need to be able to stay alive to fight another day, because we ain't going to win it overnight.
A lot of that comes down to your grassroots organization and even your state party and local affiliates. A lot of people ask me quite often, how do they get involved in their state party? How do they get involved in the local affiliate? How do they find a local candidate to support? Do you have any advice for those people?
Yeah, I mean, in the case of New York, so I'm the chair for Monroe County, so I've been doing that for a while. I'm going to step down so I can focus on the campaign in the fall. But so you can always reach out to me if you are from Monroe County. If you go to the lpny.org, we have all of our lists of local affiliates, but a lot of local affiliates, they need folks. It's a tough gig. I think like local chapters of the Libertarian Party end up doing this thing where we want to sit around and drink beers and talk politics.
We need to make them an active thing, not a social party.
Yeah. And so, and again, I love sitting around drinking beer and talking politics, right? But, the point of having a political party is to go and get people elected and to make actual change. And that's what we're trying to do in Monroe County. Is we're trying to have those relationships with elected officials and to find ways to say, hey, like we agree on this bill here to lower taxes, or we agree on this bill to, let people carry concealed carry in parks, which is illegal in Monroe County. Okay. We want to build those relationships with local politicians to advocate and lobby for those issues that are important for us, and to start electing people to local offices too. Because of course we have state assembly members that are running this year, or state candidates for state assembly that are running here in Monroe County, like Steve Becker, and we have other folks who are trying to run next year, I know, for Rochester City Council and for town boards and things like that. And those races, if you are someone who is active in your town, who cares about your community, and can go out and talk with enough folks, like those are winnable. We can do that. Like I know
there's winnable races all over this country if people just want to step up and go out there and go get them.
Yeah, do it. But you can't just sit around and have the conversation. You got to get out. And I know some people, I don't really want to go out and like bother people at the market or knock on doors, in better times. But you got to do it. That's what we're here for. We're here to win policy.
That's right. That's the legwork that's got to get done out there. So I think we're kind of coming close towards the end of the time. So I just kind of want to give you your last chance here. So what would you say to the voters in your county if you could make one final argument to them on why you're the best choice? And I'm going to highlight you here and go full screen. So,
all right, great. Well, I think that I am the best choice for being your next member of Congress, in part because I'm humble. And, I say I don't know many of the answers. But you, the voters, you often do. You know it's best to run your life, to run your family, to run your businesses, to run your nonprofits. My goal, if I'm elected to Congress, is to make sure that at least on the federal level, that you are free to do those things to make your community a better place, either through voluntary means or through offering goods and services. Again, I want to help you make your dreams possible by getting out of your way.
That's a great answer. All right, everyone. Once again, go to kevinwilsonforcongress.com. Make sure you donate 30. Let's get 100 people to donate $30 for his birthday this weekend. So everyone, kevinwilson.com. Make sure you check out his Facebook page, follow it as well, give us some shares. And people in New York, make sure you're checking out your options as well as across the country. So thank you guys, and we'll see you. Right now, I do have Spike Cohen scheduled for next Monday, guys. So start submitting some questions, and we'll see what we can do for him next week. Thank you.